hemp is equal to marijuana, and therefore you're creating the impression in consumers that it's marijuana, So they've really done a great job of shutting down the hemp industry right now. You know, we were having a lot of momentum in hemp until the government came down on us October 9th. You know, in the wake of September 7th, they all of a sudden said, whoa, we can do our whole agenda. And one little facet of their agenda was to get rid of hemp.
So she was part of the medical marijuana community in California. She became part of the medical marijuana community in Canada. And when they found her, they moved to extradite her.
We have a new terrorist in America, and it's our government. This is the DEA. They're busting us every day.
Yet the DEA is turning all of their efforts to trying to buzz patients and people who help them to safe access to their medication. So we started a direct action campaign. It started on June 6th in 55 cities. We went to DEA offices and served them with cease and desist orders. And what they said is that from here on out, we're now taking a zero tolerance stance with the federal government. That if they make another unauthorized entry into a medical marijuana dispensary, that they can expect a grassroots uprising, that they can expect an escalation in tactics. And on June 6th, we had 4 different civil disobediences. In D.C., a group of activists chained themselves to the front of the federal building. In San Francisco, we asked the DEA just to come down and take our order, and they wouldn't take it, so we sat down in front of the doors and were hauled off. And but what we really did on that day is that we sent a clear message to the federal government that this 73% of the people that support medical marijuana, that there are actually human bodies behind those numbers.
She also made a refugee claim as a political refugee from your war on drugs. She has a fear that if she comes back here, and it's a very realistic and reasonable fear, they're threatening her with 10 years to life for moving and watering these plants in McCormick's Grove. Now, if that isn't not only disproportionate, but grossly disproportionate, I don't know what is. And of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's because your judges are forced to impose those types of penalties.
In South Dakota, white plumed, I believe is the area, by the Black Hills. This is Indian Holy Land. There's a native, there's a Lakota sovereign nation located there. And what's happened is for the past 3 years, I believe it is, the farmer there has gone out, Dennis Whitehorse, and went in, he goes ahead and he plants his hemp. They get the seeds from gathering it around the United States and take it over there and they grow it. And the DEA comes in and cuts it down every year when it's about ready to harvest, just before he's ready to harvest it. So if anybody knows very much about hemp and the way that it works, if you've got seeded hemp plants and you go out there and you pull them up, what are you doing? You're breaking up the soil and you're knocking the seeds into the soil, right? So the DEA comes in there and they ripped up his plants. Well, as a result of the way they did it, it reseeded and it came back. And so this year, Dennis went out there and he went ahead and he harvested this crop, right, of DEA planted hemp. Now, what the next step is the DEA has now filed for an injunction to stop him so that in the future, if the DEA plants hemp on his land, he has to not pick it anymore.
I want you to know that I lost one eye and went through 12 years of hell. And in those 12 years, little by little, I was blinded in my right eye because of this unfair laws. I have never lost any sight to glaucoma. I lost it to poor treatments of glaucoma. But I have maintained my sight, and I see you with my left eye, thanks to the cannabis.
Your federal government is really putting a lot of pressure on the Canadian government to try and stop the medical marijuana.
So they said, oh, hemp equals marijuana. This is just an edict on the part of the DEA. Forget all these regulations and all those other things. This product that you got on your shelves is illegal.
We've got cases of people who were growing in the States who fled to Canada who are not big medical marijuana users, and they don't seem to be paying much attention to them. They're more focused on the medical marijuana.
There's other people like I want to talk about. One is a Dennis Hunter. I think somebody's handing some things out, facing 20 to life currently right now, sitting in prison for violating federal drug law, not California drug law.
You could be next. I choose love over hatred. I choose hope over fear, truth over lies. We would support a war against addiction, poverty, and abuse, but you can only wage a war against people. A campaign to educate and train Americans and beyond to understand these dangers. It's our only hope against all this craziness.
The first time I visited my brother in Wisconsin, I watched them process what was a busload of young men in belly chains and shackles, and it looked to me a scene out of Roots. And I looked at my brother and I said, is this what is going on? And he said, yeah, it's a slave ship. And there's a few white guys caught up in it. Marijuana and race. Most of the people at the Hemp Fest today are white marijuana advocates, but most of the marijuana prisoners are black marijuana smokers.
I have 2 sons in federal prison. My sons have been in prison now for 14 years. They should have never gone to prison. If we'd have had the money to pay for lawyers in Charlotte, they may not have gone. But because they were young black men and they were targeted, they're there.
In 1970, there was a man that saw that the marijuana laws in America were wrong. And he decided to do something about it. And he started the #1 primo organization, the KIND organization, to fight these laws. The only organization that's been at the forefront of the battleground since day one, since 1970. That's like 32 years he's been fighting for us. We're a little behind schedule, so I'd like to give him a lot longer introduction. But I am a proud member of the Washington State chapter of the National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you not only the founder, but the executive director of the national chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, Keith Stropp. Give him a warm welcome.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It should be of no interest or concern to the government. It is time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers.
Introduce yourself.
Keith Stropp. I'm the executive director of NORMA.
Okay. Could you tell us how you decided to start this?
Yes, at the time it was the middle of the anti-Vietnam War protests in Washington. Mm-hmm. I was just coming out of law school. I was very much caught up in the anti-war movement, and we began to notice that they were arresting a lot of people on minor marijuana charges when really what they were angry about was they had a peace sticker on their bumper. You know, in other words, they sort of, at that year, during that era, there was a lot of hostility between the police and the anti-war protesters. And so when they saw a vehicle that had a peace symbol, a lot of times they'd find an excuse to pull it over and search it for drugs or something. So a lot of people were getting busted for marijuana when that wasn't really what the deal was at all. They began to, friends of mine began to call me because I was fresh out of law school. And it appeared to me that it was endless to try to help one person at a time. So I had just finished working for a project for Ralph Nader.
Go get him, Ralph Nader. Watch this.
The American people have bounced back many times. All through our history, when things seem dark, the crooks seem on top, the double standard of the law, greed is a cancer, they bounce back. I mean, the abolition of slavery was a great step forward in American history. The women's right to vote, the trade union movement, the farmers who came out of East Texas in 1887 and swept through much of the country for the great populist progressive reform against the greedy railroads and the greedy banks that were strangling their livelihoods. Now it's your generation's time. It's our generation's time to put our arm to the wheel of justice. And we have the power if we believe. We have the power. We've got to organize.
I had seen the effectiveness he had developed by taking the consumer perspective, and we kicked it around and decided that's what we needed with marijuana. We needed the consumer perspective to be involved in the public debate, and by that means the smokers. Because up to this point, there were no smokers involved. You had people that didn't have a clue about marijuana, never smoked it, never will, making decisions affecting the lives of smokers. So at any event, that was the genesis for NORMA, and it remains our focus today. We represent smokers.
There's people like James Geddes that petitions have helped, and that's what we have to do. We have to be active. Go out there and sign our petitions, get these people out of jails, come out of the closet. We come out of the closet, they're coming out. Bottom line, they'll be out of jail. But it's the public support that does everything. Trust me, I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for people like Vivian and Dominic and Mickey, Chris, Drug Policy Foundation, so many to name, but they organized, and that's what's ensured my freedom today.
And love is what's going to win. And love is where it's at, and that is what medical marijuana is all about. It's about love. It's about the truth. It's about bringing the truth forward and bringing our family home from the jails, stopping the terrorism by the wrong people against the wrong people.
We have to come and take a stand against this evil law. I mean, not on paper and going somewhere and just talking about it, but in person.
We would ask that you write letters, send cards, or whatever to our loved ones. I'm sure you know that the November Coalition has a website that's up and running all the time. So you can get information about our loved ones from the website so that you could be in touch with them. Because we need for you not to just talk about it, we need for you to be proactive in caring for them, because they need love and care as well as fighting, trying to get the laws changed.
I assume you all know that early drafts of the Declaration of Independence were written on paper made from that plant that played such an important role in our nation's early history, hemp. Prohibition violates this relationship between individual liberty and government power that was reflected in the Declaration of Independence.
It seems everybody has an opinion about the legalization of marijuana. We're talking about this issue tonight. First, with retired Army General Barry McCaffrey. As you know, he was the nation's drug czar from 1996 to 2001. He doesn't think pot should be legal for any reason. Also joining us is Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico. You can hear me, Governor?
I can hear you, Phil.
Very good.
First off, let me say, as somebody who's smoked marijuana and doesn't smoke it anymore, marijuana is a handicap. Don't smoke marijuana. I would also like to say, not having had a drink in 15 years, to quit drinking alcohol. It's a terrible handicap, and until you quit, do you realize what a handicap it is. But that said, should we continue to make it criminal for the use of marijuana? And the statistics you cite are correct. About 800,000 people a year now are being arrested for marijuana. About 90% of those arrests are for possession only. So clearly, we cannot continue to arrest and incarcerate this country over the use of marijuana.
And so what we're showing is that we are a visible constituency, and that by going against our will and going into dispensaries, that they can expect an uprising from us as far as getting our voice out there and being present in our communities.
We, as you are aware, had one arrest at one of our clubs on 6th Street here in San Francisco, a kind of complicated situation, and Asa Hutchison appeared in San Francisco the day after that arrest to give a speech. I know I saw him on TV talking about it a while back, and his comment was, I appeared there to give a speech in San Francisco, and you know what? The DA was out front picketing me.
When I was in England, I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
Well, that was Bill Clinton, as you know, during the 1992 presidential campaign, admitting that he tried marijuana.
And I know up here in the Puget Sound region, just this past year, they realized that the #1 cause of air pollution, the biggest cause of air pollution in Puget Sound is exhaust from diesel engines and boats and anything that runs on a diesel type of engine. So biodiesel is actually a really good way to clean up that problem. And they're using it quite a bit now, a blend called B20. It's 20% biodiesel, 80% fossil diesel. And the B20 runs so much cleaner than normal diesel that a lot of bus companies and municipal companies that have old trucks are able to keep running their trucks longer because with B20 they can meet the emission standards that are supposed to be meeting. But if you go to 100% biodiesel, most of your toxins from the engine will drop about 60 to 80% with 100% biodiesel or 100% diesel. You can buy this stuff all over Europe now. There's over 1,000 gas stations around Germany where they're using it and selling it. And all the new car manufacturers all there are happy to warranty their cars on it because it burns so much cleaner than normal diesel fuel. So I'd recommend anyone who wants to find out more about it to visit the website